Sergent Mark Moloney from VicPol, and Mark has served with Victoria Police for 23 years, with most of his career being specialised as a detective in victim-centric crime themes. Mark's work has included working as an investigator with Work Unit's Phoenix Task Force, which investigated the devastation of the Black Saturday fires in 2009, the Sexual Crime Squad, and the Online Child Exploitation Task Force. Mark was promoted to the rank of Sergeant in 2015 and further promoted to Detective Sargent of Somerville Family Violence Investigation Unit in 2018. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for that, Brian. Firstly, I'd also like to thank Rose and Louise for putting this on with the partnership of Chisholm Institute. Also, that Welcome to Country by Gillian, that was an educational and impressive piece. I'd like to thank Gillian for that. In relation to that word that we had to put up, I'm nervous, so if you saw that word up there, that's me. Whoever's got energised, I want a piece of that. Whoever's energised, is that you, Gillian? Yeah, okay. All right. Look, I hope everyone's excited for what today brings, and Victoria Police obviously is that one cog in the wheel when it comes to combating family violence in the system that we work in with the sector. I think most of us here today have come a long way from the recommendations that came out of the Victoria Royal Commission into Family Violence. The findings came out of that in 2016. I'll just put some numbers to that. There was 227 recommendations to come from that, and of that, 26 of those were directed to Victoria Police to be the lead in that. They've all been implemented from Victoria Police, and I'm going to speak from a number of what those implementations are and how we've come a long way. What Ilsa, if I got that right, Ilsa, I just wrote that name down, yes. What she just mentioned before is a big thing that I'm passionate in. What I've learned is education is key. I think as we go through, you don't know what you don't know. So part of the Royal Commission findings was education with Victoria Police on how we identify with family violence, and I'll speak to that, but I can't speak highly enough of what education means, and I think at stages like this it's so important. So firstly, okay, so one of the recommendations, which is the unit which, as I said, I've been doing for 5 years, which is the Family Violence Investigation Unit. The reason the Royal Commission came out to say is that Victoria Police needed to take a different way on how we deal with responding to family violence in the investigative sense. So specialised detectives are to deal with the high risk at that higher level of family violence, which I'll go on to speak on. Before I start, can I just ask people to put their hand up who actually are currently working in the field or who's actually in training? So can everyone put their hand up if you're actually currently in the field working? And then those who are in training or aspiring to be in the field? Yeah, so we're in that, yeah. So majority of people here are in the, so if there's questions as I go, I'd rather probably, I respond better to questions than I am just to fly off these sheets of paper. So put your hand up if there's a question or you're unsure of something, but I'll speak of the Family Violence Investigation Unit. There's 21 family violence, I'll refer to them as FVIUs, that are around the state of Victoria, which is usually in council-based areas. So we're based out of Somerville, most would probably know that, which we do the councils of Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula. In that we're led by a Detective Senior Sergeant who we're blessed to have. Tracy, if you can put your hand up today, Tracy. She's new to the into our role as the LIC, and I report direct to Tracy. Then there's 2 detective sergeants, which is on one of those 2. We have 12 detectives, and then we also are blessed to have the 2 analytical support with some intel space, and we've got one of our lead analysts here. Sarah, put your hand up. Thanks. So it's not a lot of numbers to deal with it, but they're the numbers that we deal with. So part of our day is we, also, can I just probably ask actually, put your hand up if you actually have dealt with Somerville Family Violence Investigation Unit, and can you keep your hands up if it was a positive experience? Thank you. I'll move on from that. And if it wasn't, come and see me afterwards. or actually speak to Tracy. So part of that is, as I said, we deal with high risk, we deal with the crime in action, and then ongoing management plans. The management plan that we deal with, most people would know, and they could be joined in with, say, Julia's from corrections. They may be, it might be first-time offenders that we take on management of. To quantify some numbers, we're currently managing about 150 perpetrators at the moment. We're perpetrator focused. And obviously in part of that management, it's obviously how we deal with the AFM. It goes hand in glove, but as I said, for us to achieve that risk mitigation to AFMs, ours is about the accountability and holding that perpetrator to account. And so that's why the investigative background, and also we're going to have some work later on with men's behavioural program, which are the embedded Lexus workers that are men's focus, and then also that of AFM focused, being with our Good Shepherd workers that are embedded, which I'll speak a bit to. So also part of that Royal Commission, it said that we need to educate better to our frontline staff. So there are 21 senior sergeants around the state of Victoria that their sole focus is, they're called the Family Violence Training Officers, so they hold the rank of senior sergeant, and they are to educate, identify trends and roll out training around the state. So that's, I think, one of the most important things that we can do is, but that education comes from the services. As I said, like policing, we used to operate in our own little silo, and now we obviously get information that comes external. Obviously, those who understand what the information sharing scheme is, can we put our hand up so I don't have to go through? Yeah. One of the most impressive pieces of reforms I think that we've got, I think we all used to remember the days when it's like, I'm not sharing my information, you're not sharing your information, it's a bit of a standoff. Now we all get there, we understand, we share that information, and it's ultimately, it's all about risk. As soon as we identify that it's all about risk, then the doors open, the communications flow, we all get to know each other, whether it's Laura at Ramp or Julius at Corrections, Sue at Peninsula Health over there, hi Sue. It does, it becomes that relationship building. I think without that, I think we'd be back in the old days of just, you do your thing, we do our thing. So, as I said, we're coming a long way, we've got a long way to go. We operate under this model called the case prioritisation response model. And that was a lot of work that was done via Swinburne University to lead up with, ultimately it's an algorithm that every family violence report that gets reported, so the police will turn, no, it's all good. So police turn up, they do a family violence report. That's what you see on the portal and at your end, you'll see that and read the narrative. There's an algorithm that runs at the back end of that, and every day, say for example, we can average between this division, we might get 15 to 20 family violence reports that happen in a 24-hour period. You'll see that at, say, the orange door at the hub, and that's what you read. From that, it gets an algorithm. That then is determined whether or not our unit as an FEIU need to either oversight it or take it on for management. Of those, say, let's call it 15 to 20, the prioritised might be about 3 to 5 of those, could be that number, and of those, we may take management of, say, 2 to 3 of those, if we're not already managing in those parties. So that's sort of that finer end of how it works as to what we deal with. And then comes the hard work of management. And I think we all agree management it can be hard, but ultimately we can't do it without the relationships of the sector. And it's usually the caseworkers, of the practitioners that get those relationships, the information, and having that trust to come to police. And I think I would hope that those that have dealt with Somerville have that the knowing and the belief that they can come to Somerville and know that how we take it on and it'll be dealt with. But as I said, I think there's a lot of strong relationships in the room. I can look around and say that we've dealt with, whether it's through the ramp or not. But so that's, as I said, there has been some science behind it as to when we talk about the professionals from Swinburne to come up with this algorithm. That took a number of years to roll out, and that's still evolving as well. So there's a bit of work that's happening in that space. I won't go on to the information sharing scheme as to how important it is, but as I said, that's something that, as I said, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and the more we understand, and I think with education, new people into the sector is probably one of the first things that they need to probably be aware of is their role with information sharing scheme and what they can and can't provide when it comes to a current risk assessment. Has anyone got any questions yet? Because I could probably just... Yes, there's a hand.
I wanted to ask how long is training around family violence response given in the economy? And do you think it's enough?
Great question. Probably not enough. And the reason I'll probably say that is, and I'm not defending the policing role in the training, but it's there, it's strong, because it is a huge part of our work. It's greater than the 50% of the frontline response. So the uniformed police you see driving around, it's definitely more than that 50% response of that is dealing with family violence. So you'd hope that the training is, but unfortunately there's so many cogs in the wheel of what policing require. That's why we have a family violence training officer, which is that senior sergeant I spoke of. That's that ongoing. So they graduate, they have to learn a mini cog in the wheel as to who they are as police, and then from that, family violence has to be and must be ongoing training throughout. So that's why we have it. So it's forever evolving with training, and it still is, yes.
And with the training that's delivered by these specialist workers, what training do they have in family violence response?
Sorry, you're saying who's training the training?
Yeah, like do they have like a degree, or they have to do like family violence certificate? Like
So the family violence training, that course that you just mentioned before, that's they become trained. So ultimately they become qualified in training. Most of the people that get into that training role usually they promote people into that role that have come from strong background. I'll put my hand up and say my next course of promotion hopefully is into that senior sergeant training role. So there'll be people that have come from a background where they've seen and worked the front line of it and see what it is. Then they learn the skill of what it comes to be a trainer. So they'll do that Cert 4 in training, and then hopefully it's the perfect fit. So we are looking for the right people. So if anyone wants to be my referee when I apply for a job, feel free. So hopefully that answers that. Yep. Any other questions? Or otherwise I'll keep moving forward. So part of it is everyone here know the Alexis model as to how it operates, that we have an embedded caseworker from Good Shepherd that's been working within our unit for the last 5 years, and how that looks. So amazing at what they do. So probably easier to give an example as to how it looks in a practical sense. It could be as simple as, well, not as simple as, but we might have a female that's turned up to Frankston Hospital, serious injuries. We know it's family violence. The report gets through the health sector to say that they believe it's family violence. We then will get notified of it because it would fit our criteria to do so. We would then roll out with the Good Shepherd Alexis worker, knowing that we work better together by going out. So we might have that joint response. We will then go out, and it's getting the buy-in sometimes, and we completely understand as to why they may or may not want to talk to police. So that we explain who we are and what we're about, that this is our only job that we deal with is family violence. If that's still not enough for them to communicate with us, we might take a back step. We might then use the practitioner to then offer their support and wrap around, and it might just be building that relationship, getting information that we can sometimes not require that statement from the victim. It might just be that we can prosecute by being detectives and following a bouncing ball another way through medical records or however that may be. So that's how it can work in a practical sense. Does it work? Yes. Is it successful? Yes. And that's probably why it's still going. And of recent time, we've been funded, which I won't run in on Russell and Karen's, but they focus on the perpetrator and they're embedded into our unit. So, and that's been continued to be funded, but they'll speak of that. But ultimately, I think we're going in the right direction. A lot of work to go. It's the sharing, collaborative approach. As I said, we're only one cog in that wheel. When you talk about the 227 recommendations, and Vic Poll with a lead of 227, there's a lot of cogs have got a lot of responsibilities outside of those 27. So I think we're an important part on dealing with it, but I think we all have to be in it together to get to that point. Any questions? As I said, I'll keep talking and yes. Yes. So every station must have a sergeant who holds the portfolio of the Family Violence Liaison Officer. So if you're in the sector and you're having trouble with a police response, or you've got, and it may not warrant just calling the Somerville Family Violence every time for it, and you just go into the local station, that's how to get buy-in can be as simple as that. Who is the Family Violence Liaison Officer for Hastings, Mornington, Rosebud? And then you may get that name, Sergeant whoever, and then from that point you've got a point of contact. So their role is, say if we're taking on that top 3 to 5%, the rest of that might sit at what we categorise as medium risk. That would sit at uniform level to manage with a sergeant who holds a portfolio of Family Violence Liaison. Are you saying that if you had positive experience in that space? Or? I'm hoping that they should be able to go into a police station and get the support and service from whoever they deal with. That's what we're there to do. It's not, the responsibility doesn't sit with just FVIU, it sits with Victoria Police as a whole. So if an AFM is walking into a station, ultimately I'd be hoping they're getting the service from whoever answers that counter inquiry, and that responsibility should be sitting with them. The oversight of where that investigation goes or the intervention or the process may sit with the supervisor of the FVLO, the liaison officer, but everyone has that responsibility. Yeah, does that sort of answer it? Yeah. Any other questions?
No? Yes, it is working. What we're going to do is we're going to do live questions on Mentimeter as well. So we'll do this a few times throughout the day. So if you just use the number at the bottom there and you've got questions for speakers, and we'll do this right now for Mark, you can put that in, and if we don't get a chance to get to those, we'll get your questions to the speaker for them to give a response to as well. So please feel free to do that. And you don't have to wait until this point. It's whenever a speaker's speaking, you can throw those questions out. But I guess, are we going to go to Mentimeter, Rose, to have a look if anyone is throwing questions in there? But
We can try for live ones, so put your hand up.
yeah, we can put the hand up as well, but I guess I just want to also thank you for presenting, Mark, and certainly at Family Life, we work closely with the Family Violence Investigation Units. We've got Alexis workers in Paran and also Bayside stations as well. And we've just expanded out to 5 courts for the court-mandated counselling orders program. So there's a lot of work happening, and it can be quite overwhelming. So I certainly know that our work with BPIFVP, we value a lot. And connecting, we talk about that integration, connecting the courts, us as services, and BPIFVP is just so important. There's a way to go. There's definitely a way to go, but I think there's some really goodwill that is happening. Do we have a question? Oh, Rose, you can have a question.
When I was on holidays a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to the radio and they said that the New South Wales Police had just arrested 600 perpetrators in New South Wales. And I just wondered what Victoria Police's response to that was, or comments or opinion, or did you know about it? It was all over the news.
No, have no. So are they saying that they've arrested 600? Yeah.
On a particular day and arrested 600 perpetrators, of which they had something like, they reckon 200 or 300 were at serious risk of murdering someone.
I think what you're saying there is I've got a good OIC who we're going to. I think for that to happen, it sounds like they've done some operation for a day of action statewide where they've gone out and enforced all their enforceable actions. I'll send an email to the Assistant Commissioner via my Senior Sergeant and see if we can organise a day of action statewide.
My question would be, why did they wait for that need to be needed to be arrested?
That's why you're the Senior Sergeant. Well done, great response.
question would be why somebody's obviously uncovered it. There's a lot of people in New South Wales, and I haven't seen that media, and I'm speaking just from my limited knowledge of since I've been there, to how we organise things. Somebody's uncovered that there's all of these perpetrators out there that haven't been dealt with, and then there's action. That would be my house.
Yeah. I just thought it was a really interesting approach, and whether it's trying to send a message somewhere to these guys that they can't just cruise along. But, I was just interested in all the action.
It's a high priority when there's an intervention order to be served, particularly where it's in my office, because they are the highest of the priorities. My members are out immediately, or using our intelligence to be able to try and track these people. And we have very few. We have other enforceable actions that go out to our uniform, things like warrants, whereabouts, that type of thing. But we oversight all of those as well, and I get reported fortnightly on the outstanding enforceable actions. It goes out to all the OICs in the station, and there's pressure put on them to actually try and find these people. And
I think you're on the move to the New South Wales Police Commissioner, Tracy, with those sort of solving of problems. Yes.
Another question?
I was wondering how you guys deal with perpetrator misidentification.
Very good point. I was actually going to come down to it. I've got a point here that actually says misidentification. So prior to today, there was meant to be a senior sergeant from Family Violence Command who was meant to co-present today. They couldn't make it, but I spoke with her on Tuesday. One of the points was, as a working piece, is where Victoria Police is at, and that is around misidentification. I think it's. I think we all accept, especially at the goes through that portal and ends up at your end, and we're in that relationship, or you see it where it's the female listed as the AFN, as the respondent be the. So just to put it into context, when the frontline go, they deal with the crisis in action. They have the 39 questions, which has come from the Royal Commission, is to try to get frontline members to be better educated, to ask the right questions, to get the right outcome. Is it always working? No. I think we understand a million factors as to why that can. That information could be corrupted by a number of things, so it may not be a true reflection. As I said, the member turning up at 3 o'clock in the morning to an address and making that risk assessment may not have the luxury of that shared information, which we then find out after which we get that comment, where it'll be someone will ring and say, oh, this one went through, but they didn't understand this, they didn't know that there was active management somewhere else, or there was orange door engagement, and there's that's the reason why we have information sharing scheme. We can now call up and say, hey, we might have got this wrong. But it's not to say they got it wrong on the night on how they did it. It's just to come and say the long term in hindsight. So Victoria Police need to work on putting things in place to try to stop that. And if it does go through to the keeper, that it ends up at the portal end where it may be a misidentification, well, guess what? We just deal with it. We have to work on it. And then how do we rectify? As long as the service and the response from police post that is right, if it hits the system and that we've got it wrong on the night, then as long as we can acknowledge it, not double down on it, and we go to right and the wrong, then I think that's important.
And how do you determine, based on the narrative, I guess, who is the perpetrator? If, like, say, the man is telling you the narrative, how do you determine who's the perpetrator on the night? I guess is my question.
I think without knowing, there's a million variables of that scenario playing out, but I would hope that we're talking in the male-female turning up, we're not quite sure. We all understand that coercive control has been, that's been going on for as long as I've been in the police force, where you might be hearing from, the wife might be in the back room in the corner not saying anything for a number of reasons. We've since been learned and educated as to why they're not speaking up, but we've got the calm, collected husband standing here, putting the mental illness and everything on the wife and not on them. As I said, we've seen that and evolved and learnt on that. If frontline police or police in a general response are turning up and they don't know who the perpetrator is, but we know a family violence incident has occurred, it should be that it defaults to the position of what we know, and that would be the male would be listed as A. But that can be written within the narrative. It should be written within the narrative. Police turned up. They were unable to identify who the dominant aggressor was. However, in this situation, we've listed the respondent. So therefore, the service can get involved, and if a wrong has to be written right down the track, whichever way it goes, as long as the services are in place to do that. But hopefully that's sort of, yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you again, and thank you for your questions, everyone. Please feel free to send more through to Mentimeter, and we will get those answers for you. So, again, join me in thanking Mark.